Colleagues, welcome back to the office and for part 3 of Mastering Adobe Acrobat for Financial Professionals. In this series, we have been discussing the inner workings of Adobe Acrobat, which is this incredible tool with respect to creating, managing, editing documents for digital distribution. A PDF, portable document format, is essentially the equivalent of digital paper. It is a faithful and accurate representation of a piece of paper represented digitally. And Adobe Acrobat is the gold standard with respect to tools that we can use for creating, editing, and managing them. Now, in part 1 of this series, what we ended up talking about was just essentially what PDFs are, how they function, the inner workings, and the Adobe Acrobat application. Adobe Acrobat's been around for, at this point, close to almost 40 years, I'm going to say, somewhere between 30 and 40. And it has a reader program, which is free, a standard, and a professional version. And just depending on what level of functionality will determine what version of the application you get. But we're talking about the premium versions of this, the standard and the pro, which are tools that we can use for, again, creating, editing, and managing these PDF documents. And in episode 1, we talked about the different versions of this and why you might want to choose one or the other. In episode 2, we talked about creating PDFs, editing PDFs, and then we started our conversation with respect to forms inside of PDFs. Now, today we are going to go ahead and pick back up, and we're going to finish our discussion on Adobe Acrobat forms inside of PDFs themselves, and specifically e-signature, what it looks like to create and get signatures from people using Adobe PDFs. Now, from there, we're going to go ahead and then discuss some other key aspects of the Acrobat application. This tool, which is so important and powerful, most folks just scratch the surface with respect to some of the things that you can do with it. Most folks, for example, just use it to output PDFs, let alone and kind of glance over the forms, the e-signature, or other aspects. So I'm going to go ahead and share with you some of my favorite features and functions of the application itself, including things like reviewing and comparing files, stamps and measuring things, sharing things, sending out for comment, the action wizard, and more. And depending on time, we'll also take a look at some alternatives to Adobe Acrobat that you might want to use if you don't want to get the licensing. Good news is, in today's environment in 2022, you have lots of options with respect to management of these PDFs. So there's no shortage of tools that can be used at every budget level, every type, mobile, desktop, Mac, PC, for creating and editing. Acrobat's just one of them. But I will say, from a business user's perspective, it's probably the overall best. And the one, even though it's not free, would be the tool that I would encourage you to consider using. Now, before we get started, I do want to remind you that you can earn credits for watching or listening to our podcast today. Super simple. You can earn your credits in just as few as a couple of minutes. As with all CPE Today podcasts, they are available for CPE credit at cpetoday.com. Today's course code is ADFP3, but you can just go to cpetoday.com and search for Adobe PDF and you'll find our course. Complete a short quiz and you get a certificate with your credit. You can make today's podcast credit 100% for free by using coupon code ONEFREEPODCAST at checkout to make your credits today free. Now, if you enjoy this type of content, please consider subscribing and both on YouTube or Facebook or on wherever you happen to receive your content, including Apple Podcasts and more. We put out the CPE Today podcast every week, twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays. And our podcast, besides offering fantastic training like Adobe Acrobat in this current series or Microsoft Excel and more, we bring you the latest and greatest in technology, accounting, and business knowledge. Often reviews, analysis, and training on stuff that we think is going to make you useful, powerful, and effective in your career. And we put it out 100% for free. How awesome is that? And you can just tune in live and watch it Tuesdays and Fridays at 11 a.m. Pacific on YouTube or Facebook, or you could subscribe on YouTube or Apple Podcasts and Spotify and get the episodes pushed to you directly to your mobile handset. So please consider checking it out if you enjoy this type of content. Alrighty, without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. Now, we are going to start our discussion today picking up on a discussion from episode 2, which is around forms and signatures. Now, if you didn't see episode 2, I'd recommend that you check it out. It's a pretty good episode that discusses many of the authorship and editing capabilities of Adobe Acrobat. But where I really want to pick up here is continuing our discussion on forms, and I want to show you what it looks like to create a form for e-signature from start to finish from Microsoft Word through Acrobat, sending it out for e-signature and getting that document pulled back to us. Now, creating a form is super simple inside of Acrobat. Really, if you can create the form from scratch directly inside of Acrobat, but my personal recommendation for you is to actually create it in Microsoft Word. Word, for so many different reasons, is a much easier authorship environment compared to Acrobat. It's going to give you things like spell check, grammar check, a lot more styling options, and frankly, most of you have some familiarity with Microsoft Word and how to use it. So I think it's a good fit in terms of the authorship environment. And once you've created that form inside of Word, what you're going to ultimately then do is then push it to Acrobat to create the form. And then when you create the form, you can also request that e-signature. I'll show you how all that works here in a moment. Now, the e-signature component of Adobe Acrobat is part of the DC subscription, that document cloud subscription. And if you've subscribed to the application through, Creative Cloud or through some other licensing mechanism, you can create these e-signatures with either the standard or the pro. And what's cool about this is that when you send this document out for e-signature, it creates a legally binding signature on that document, just like if they were to physically take pen and paper and sign it in your office. Now, this isn't effective for every single type of document. Like I know there are special rules and consideration about when you would use, for example, a notary. So things like estates and trusts, or, title and deeds to a home, I'm absolutely going to defer to the experts in those specific sections. But your 8879s, your engagement letter, your management representation letter, and more, it's a no-brainer. You should use e-signature from Adobe because it's just as effective as that signature that you would get on paper without actually having to create a paper. So let's go ahead and switch over and take a look at Adobe forms and e-signature services. And let's go ahead and actually start first in Microsoft Word and look at what it likes to create a form in there. And then we'll push it over to Acrobat to create the form and send it out for e-signature. Alrighty, so we're here inside of Microsoft Word, and I've created just a simple sample file here, of what it might look like to sponsor a soccer team for a youth soccer club. I will point out, if you purchase our course today on cpetoday.com, you'll get today's sample file and a bunch of other sample files that are useful for creating and working with PDFs as part of your purchase. So again, another reason to consider getting your credits with us. Check out cpetoday.com for more info. Now, if you choose to create just a blank form, all you really have to do is lay it out in the way that you would physically lay it out if it were to be printed. If I were to go print this document as in its exact form, what you see on the screen is what would get outputted from the printer. And as a guy who's created so many different types of forms over the years, I would tell you that it's part art, part science. You need to find a way to balance the information that you're looking to collect with aesthetics and making it easy and also being complete. If you make the form too long, too cumbersome, you're probably not going to get all the information you want. If you make it too brief, same thing, you might not get all the information you want. And so I would tell you to think logically when you're creating a form, what needs to be at the top, what needs to be at the middle, and try to create a flow. And that just comes from practice. And I've created a lot of forms, usually online forms, for people to complete. Not so many in-person physical forms, but the process is relatively the same. You try to group common things, like stuff about the team goes up on top, stuff about the sponsor goes below, signature is usually the last thing, and that's generally how that kind of comes together. So the way you physically do this inside of Word, like let's go ahead and recreate this top line here. You would literally type out something like team name, colon, and then you'd literally give it a underline just like this, and we might say date. Okay. And that would go ahead and create that space for us. And that's exactly how you would go about doing it for the rest of this form. Any text you wanted to add, you'd add text, but anywhere you expect for people to fill out, you're going to go ahead and just put that line. Now that line serves two purposes. If you actually physically print the form, it's going to give somewhere for people to actually physically sign the document and fill out the document. But if you choose to push this out through Acrobat, which we're going to do here in a moment, Acrobat does a pretty darn good job of recognizing where form fields should be, and it will go ahead and create a space automatically for someone to have an area where you can go ahead and complete that section. So we've gone ahead and we've created our form the way we want it to be. We're going to come up here to Acrobat, and we're going to use that native Acrobat plugin. We're going to use that native Acrobat plugin to be able to just go ahead and come up here inside of that Acrobat ribbon, and we're going to go ahead and choose that Create PDF option. Okay, so it's going to ask us to save the file, and then we're going to go ahead and save this as sponsor form. And I live up here in beautiful Big Bear Lake, California, so we're going to go ahead and say Big Bear. Okay, and that will go ahead and generate that PDF for us. Okay, so there we go. In one click, we can go ahead and generate that PDF right out of Word and push it directly into Acrobat. Now, for those of you who've been following along with episodes 1 and 2, you know that the Acrobat tools are over here in the tool section of the application up here in the toolbar. You're not going to find it in the actual navigation any longer. Modern versions of Acrobat have a separate tools menu. And all of your forms and signature stuff is going to be grouped together under forms and signatures, which you can find right in the middle of the screen. Now, in our first episode, we used this form option called fill and sign, which allows you to be able to complete a form if somebody sent it to you and ask you like, hey, I've created this form and they didn't set it up as an actual form, and you could fill it out easily and quickly. But in this example, what we're doing is we're the coach, we're the ASO coordinator here, the Little League coordinator, the T-ball mom, whatever. And we're actually creating a form that we want other people to fill out. So we're going to create what I call a dynamic form, which has placeholders for those different sections. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to use instead this prepare form option. And what this prepare form option will allow us to do will allow us to be able to create that form relatively automatically. And I showed you this here in the last section. And the real kicker here is this little option right here that says form field auto detection is on. If this is off, as an example, you're going to have to specify every single field of the form automatically. And frankly, that could just be a heck of a lot of extra work. And so I just recommend that you leave that option on. And we're going to go ahead and also say that this requires e-signature so we can do the full experience of sending something out for e-signature. And we're going to go ahead and hit start. Now, this does a fairly good job of recognizing where those form fields are. Look, over here, it selected team name, a date, even names all these things for us. The only thing it didn't pick up, just like it didn't in the last episode here, was that we have some little check boxes for these different fields. And so we're going to go ahead and add those manually through our form settings options up top. And we have all different types of form fields that we can add: text box, check boxes, radios, drop-down menus, email addresses, signature, initials. We can add company, organization, dates, and more. Okay. And we're just going to go ahead and just make that a little bit smaller. And then we can actually copy and paste this, which is quite nice. I've done a ton of these over the years, and like I said, I've done more web forms than I have, God, come on. I've done more web forms than I have physical forms, but still they're about the same. Okay. And sometimes it could be a little tedious getting these things to go where they want. Like, why are you copying over there? And why can't I easily pick you up? There we go. I can pick this guy up now, and we're just going to drag and drop this physically on the form where we would like it to be. All righty. And we can do stuff like select all of them like this. And notice over here on the right-hand side, we've got our align and center, so I can make them all look nice by snapping them to be center aligned. And I can also distribute them vertically so that they're properly spaced amongst each other, just like that. Okay. Now, Inside of each of these fields, as I kind of mentioned in our last episode, but a bit brief, we can give it a name, we can give it a tooltip, okay? We can adjust the appearance. So if we wanted to adjust, for example, what font size, by default, it's going to go to auto. So if there's less data, it'll end up being really big text. If it's a ton of data, it'll make it automatically smaller. We could adjust the position. We can also adjust the values. You know, if a field should be single line or multi-line, whether we want to allow rich formatting like bolding and underlining, and the like. We can also put rules around this, whether or not you can limit the characters or how long it should be. Now we can also come over here and we can lock a field. We can make a field read only. We can make it required if we want to limit what people can do. Okay. We can also select multiple fields all at once, and we can also, and this is typically what I end up doing here, is I will select, for example, the font size to make all the fonts for every selected field the same size. Otherwise, you end up getting really big text and really small text, just depending on how big or small that field is. And that just generally never really looks that good. And so we can just go ahead and maybe we'll select 12 point as our standard. We'll click OK. Now, at this point, this is what I've shown you up to this point in the first episode. We click over here to preview. We can actually complete this form. We can get a sense of how it would look. So again, we're working on the Big Bear Cubs as our team. Our date is 08/16/22. Okay. Person responsible is Stephen M. Yas, so on and so forth. And what we've done here is that we have essentially created a field of an easy form that people can just click on and click to the different sections that they'd like to complete. And, you know, they can save progress on this, they can come back, and it's just great. Okay. A couple other things I probably would maybe spend a little bit more time, especially if it's going to be used for a long period of time and it's important to make it look good. I might adjust the vertical alignment of these, you know, so for example, the Big Bear Cubs here is actually touching the line below it. So, you know, I can adjust this through either the font size and settings or the position size and settings as well. I could also, for example, just come on down here and actually physically move this down a little bit so that when it is printed, you know, the words line up correctly. It's really kind of up to you. There's several different ways of making that work. So that is kind of the form generation of this, but that's not the whole story here. Okay, so we've gone ahead and we've prepared the form. We've created the stuff the way that we want it to be. And I'm going to pull my data out here because I want to create something that we can complete online. So I don't want to give it default options. Okay. And I'm just going to go ahead and set this back just to make it the way it was. And we actually now want to send this out for e-signature. Okay. Now, when I use e-signatures the most, and this is Steve personally here, I'm typically contracts, agreements, independent contractor stuff, employment contracts, proposals. Those are usually the things I'm sending out for e-signature. And so usually it's each document, it's its own thing. Occasionally I create a form, but most of the time it's an agreement of some sort. I will point out if it's a one-off document, you can access this functionality straight inside of Word from the home menu. You'll see the option here that says request signatures, and it'll bypass a lot of the form stuff other than, like, for example, a signature, and just frankly makes life easier. But for this, I'm giving you the full shebang. Okay. Now there is one special field down here, and it's going to be this signature field. Notice we've got this guy. If we click on this in our settings here, you'll see that it gave it the name of signature 1. And then we'll see field type is signature, and then the participant role is signature. Now you can have several people sign the same document. Technically you can have 7. You have the original signature, and then you can have 6 additional signatures is needed, plus the sender as well. And so I can assign, for example, the signer, and I could specify who this person is. So let's go ahead and say that this specific document is going to be signed by Johnny Demo here. And so here's Johnny Demo's email. I'm going to go ahead and populate this and pull this down. And what this is going to do when we go to our next section here, it's going to know that Johnny Demo is the one who's supposed to sign this. And we can also indicate that the signature is required. Okay. Now you'll notice it's now required because it's red. Over here, we can do the same thing. We're going to go ahead and make the date required as well. And you'll notice here under our field type, it's set to text. We're going to go ahead and change this to date, so that it knows that it is supposed to be a date and it is also required. Now, once we're happy with our form, it looks and feels and functions the way that we expect it to be. What we will see here on the lower right-hand side is this request e-signature option. Okay, and from this request e-signature option, this is going to go ahead and initiate our e-signature for this particular document here. And from here, you'll see, because I had already previously provided the signature for this person, demo@cpetoday.com, it already pre-filled it. Now I can go ahead and provide a little email here. So sponsor form, Big Bear, please review and complete this document. I could say, for example, please let me know if you have any questions. Okay. Okay. And under our more options here, give this a second to upload. We get some additional options with respect to how this e-signature should be done. So if we wanted to add additional recipients, we can go ahead and do so. Okay. We can specify some of the authentication. For example, we could password protect this. So if I send it not only by email, but they also have to provide an additional password to access the document for e-signature. This could be really effective if you have a document, for example, with social security numbers or payroll data, credit card information. Password protecting it adds that additional layer to this. And then certainly you wouldn't provide the password in this notification. You'd typically give them a call or shoot them a text. If you send something by email, you never want to send the password also by email. You want to use a different communication method in case their email is compromised. But for this purposes, we're going to select email, which will provide the ability to just click a link and it'll go straight into the document. We could add additional recipients to this. So if we wanted to have not only Demo, but Steve and then Alice and then Bob, we could list that as well. We could force them to complete this in order. So Demo signs it, Steve signs it, Alice signs it, Bob signs it, so on and so forth. Or we could just basically say, sign it in whatever order you want. But if it were a contract, maybe we're going to go in order of seniority inside of the organization. Okay, we have our little message. We can add additional files. So maybe I want to send them like an additional, like maybe background information. Maybe I want to send them a brochure about our soccer team and how we're the greatest in Big Bear. We can add those additional files and those will be sent when this document gets sent out for e-signature. And then lastly, over here, we can set our reminder. So often following up on stuff like, I need you to sign this, and they don't sign it, that can take some time and then you forget about it. And a week goes by, a month goes by, and you still don't have it back. Well, you can automatically set a signature reminder saying, you know what, remind them once a day, once a week, every business day, every other day, and they'll keep getting an email until they actually engage with this document or you recall it. Now, I think every week is probably sufficient, so we'll say every week here. And once this is good to go, we'll go ahead and click next. It's going to upload this to the Adobe DC cloud. It's processing this document here. The next screen is going to pop up. It's going to ask us where to specify to fill and sign. And we already did that here. So it already knows, for example, that that is signature 1. And this is the date that we want to do here. On the right-hand side here, we have other fields that we could drag in. So if we wanted to collect other information about this, we could go ahead and do so as well. Now, once we're happy with this form, we're ready to actually send this out for e-signature. We're going to go ahead and choose this option as send. Now, before I do, I want to show you this option here, save as a template. So if this is a sponsorship that I plan on doing repeatedly, well, saving as a template is going to save me a lot of time because I won't have to recreate this every time. But for our purposes here, let's go ahead and hit send. It will now upload this to the Adobe DC cloud, and it's going to go ahead and send off 2 emails. It's going to send an email to the author. So in this case, it sends it to my personal email here saying Steve has sent out a document to be signed. And it is also going to go ahead and send an email to, in this case, Johnny Demo here, letting him know that a form has been generated and that form is available for his e-signature. So let's click over here to Outlook so you can see what this looks like. Alrighty, so I got my little notification here saying that I've received an email, and we'll see exactly what this e-signature form looks like. So Steve Yoss requests your signature on sponsor form Big Bear. Click here to review and sign. Okay, and in doing so, it's going to open up a secured link, and it's going to go ahead and walk Johnny demo through filling out this form. And so we're going to go ahead and agree to the privacy terms. We can see that there's a little message from Steve here. Now, I didn't make any of the other fields required. In practice, I probably would. I can't, for example, sponsor a sponsorship form unless I know the team or who is doing this. So in practice, when you're designing your forms, you're going to want to go ahead and select the appropriate fields to be required. But this is going to go ahead and be for the Big Bear Eagles or the Big Bear Cubs. Okay, the date of this is going to be 08/16/22. Steve Yas. Okay, let's say it's CP Today is the sponsor. And we'd fill out the rest of this info. We're feeling quite generous. Oops, looks like I made a mistake here. I should have made those independent of each other. But why not? Let's say we're going to sponsor everything at every level, and we'll also do a $50 sponsorship as well. The kicker down here, though, that I really wanted to show you is this signature. And this is going to be where we click to sign and also add the date. And when we click to sign, we can type our signature out. Okay. We can draw our signature. That's kind of what my signature looks like. We can upload an image, and we can also send a text notification to ourselves and sign on our iPhone or Android device on the Adobe Signatures page. But I'm going to go ahead and just type my signature out here. I'll click apply. It adds my signature to this. We'll also come over here and add the date. 08/16/22. We're done. We go ahead and we click to sign, and it is now finished this form. Now straight away, I can go ahead and download a copy of this form. If I come back over here to Outlook, it will have emailed me a copy of my signed form as well. Okay, and it'll be attached to this. And also the original author of that form will have received a signed copy of this as well. Let's go ahead and download this form so you can see what it looks like. We'll open it here in Acrobat. Now, the form, when it comes in, this is a secured document. You'll see up here, for example, it says certified by Adobe Sign. And if you tried, for example, to go and edit this particular document, it won't let you. It'll say this document has been signed and cannot be edited. And it essentially has integrity. You just can't, once this document has been signed, it's not something that anybody can modify without destroying the signature that is included. It'll give you an underline telling you who signed it, the date and time. And there's also a document that will show you the provenance of this document. So the status, when it was signed, the transaction ID that is unique to this exact document, the history, okay? And there's also the signature panel. And we can go in here, and this is kind of computer mumbo jumbo for 99% of us here, but we can actually see all the specifics related to this e-signature. And if this document were tampered with, it's going to modify the security of the actual document itself and destroy the fidelity that we have inside this document. So as it stands now, we know that this is a document that we can rely upon. And we know that this actually has integrity and it has not changed since the time of that person creating the document. So that's a little bit about e-signature. As I mentioned, I use this all the time. It is something that I think is one of the best features and functions of Adobe Acrobat, and I would encourage you to check it out because it is certainly well worth your effort. And in my opinion, it works just as good, if not better, than DocuSign, HelloSign, or any of the other e-signature services. And it will be in the exact same licensing that you're already paying for. Alrighty, so in our next section, let's go ahead and discuss some of the other distribution and reviewing options provided by Acrobat. And let's talk about some of the DC-centric, document cloud-centric features that you can do inside of Acrobat here, okay? So you should know that when somebody sends you a document at all levels of the application, Reader, Standard, and Pro, you can comment on that document, you can highlight it, you can do sticky notes, you can do freehand drawings, markups, and more. And it's a great way to be able to provide feedback and review of an actual document and ultimately provide some comments that maybe somebody will use to improve it. Often I'm proofreading books and classes and courses and other stuff like that. And the commenting feature is quite nice because it allows me to go back in time and provide that documentation and then ultimately send that information back to people for their review and then update. So let me show you how to do some commenting on these documents. All right, so we're back here inside of Acrobat, and on the right-hand side, we're going to go ahead and choose the option here that says comment, and this is going to go ahead and load up our comment toolbar. So some basic stuff, we can go ahead and highlight text if we wanted to. Okay, we can underline text if we wanted to. So if we wanted to redline something, we can do that. We can go ahead and redline and provide a comment. So we can go ahead and say, this doesn't seem like the right time period. Okay, we can go ahead and provide some feedback and comments in this report. We can go ahead and stencil it. We can go ahead and draw on it. I mean, you can do whatever you want as it relates to these actual documents. So if you're like, no, I don't want this field there, I can either highlight it and turn it red, or I could just literally pick up my pen and comment on this as well. And you got all different aspects of geometric shapes. But most of the time what I'm end up doing is most of the time I'm highlighting stuff, and most of the time I'm just dropping little notes. I have a question. So you can do this both offline as well as online with respect to the document cloud version of this. So if somebody just sent you a document, you can just download it inside of Adobe Acrobat and just review it in there and send the actual file back to them. But you can also do another option here called send for comments as well. And with send for comments, it basically, you send whatever document you're on, like we just did here, and just kind of like the e-signature service is actually going to send. It's actually going to go ahead and send this out electronically to that person and allow them to be able to review and provide commentary on that actual document itself. But they don't have to have the full version of Acrobat. You actually carry the license, and you can send this out to them, and they will actually do the commenting and reviewing on Adobe's website, very similar to how that e-signature service works as well. Okay, so let me go ahead and show you how that works. So we're over here in our Adobe Acrobat. And again, I'm just in that conference report we looked at here in a moment. And if I wanted to send this over to Johnny Demo for review, we would select this option, send for comments, and we'd go ahead and just drop in Johnny Demo. Please let me know what you think. Thanks. And we're going to say he can allow comments. Just like with the e-signature, it's going to go ahead and send this out to somebody. In this case, Johnny Demo. Johnny's going to go ahead and get an email from this here in a moment. And when they go to review and edit this, we don't have to worry about actually physically sending them the document. It will send it to them electronically, and they'll actually consume this in their web browser. Okay, and doesn't look like it's coming through. Let me see if I can grab the link, and I'll actually just force it to come up. Okay, this is also an option. You can just copy the link and bring it in this way, but in a nutshell, this is what this looks like. You can provide those comments. So here, this is a comment. Okay, we can go ahead and we can highlight stuff like this. We can go ahead and do a little thought bubble. So we're going to go ahead and say, here, is this real life or just a fantasy? Okay. And there we go. You know, so this would be providing those comments in this case, not inside of Acrobat, but in the Acrobat DC service. Now, if we come back over here, notice that in real time, those comments are actually also included in here as well. And so as people create those comments and you've done this sharing and distributing through DC, it's going to be at real-time feedback, and you'll be able to incorporate those changes in as close to real time as it gets. So I personally like to send it out this way rather than asynchronously just attaching and sending that PDF to them. And, it's a hope and pray that they actually review it. In this case, we can actually send it out and we can actually see that feedback as it's coming in real time. Super cool. Okay. Now, there are other features that you can do with this that you should know. Let's say you don't want to do the whole commenting thing. You just want to distribute the PDF to them. Great, you can do so. That's super simple. That's just using the standard sharing functionality. And that's just for distribution. Okay. So in that case, I send a link to somebody. They can download the document. They can view it online. This is really useful for big PDFs, really useful for collaboration and more. And you can actually track consumption and utilization of those links. So you can actually send something to somebody and know if they actually interacted with it or if they actually consumed that information. So that's kind of cool to be able to do. Okay. And a couple other editing tools that are useful too. You can use the stamp and measure. This is really simply, you can just put a rubber stamp on something, saying it's completed, it was received, it's past due. Think about the old school days when you had like your rubber stamps in the office, and the administrative assistant would stamp it as received. So, you knew exactly when that piece of document was received. And I know a lot of law offices still actually do this. Well, this is when one of those digital ways you can recreate that exact same action. Let me go ahead and show you that as well. Okay, so we're back here inside of our document and we're going to come over here to our tools menu and we're going to go ahead and choose. Okay, hold on. Let me just go back over and choose a different document, one that I have not shared. And let's just go ahead and say it is this management report. Okay. And again, all these documents are available, sample files if you'd like to work with them from cpetoday.com. And let's say I want to stamp this management report as being received. Well, what we can do is we can come over here to our tools menu. And from our tools menu, we'll go ahead and select stamp. And this is going to be where we can go ahead and we can choose multiple different types. So we can go ahead and stamp it as revised, reviewed, as received, approved, so on and so forth. We can even put, like, for example, check marks, sign here. And then there's also a whole set of standard stamps, approved, not approved. Maybe, for example, for our financial statement here, we're going to go ahead and put a stamp for public release. And we're going to also put an approved stamp. Maybe let's make that approved stamp dynamic. Okay. And these just kind of, again, they're similar to those rubber stamps that you would use in the office as well. So they're just kind of cool for kind of keeping track of stuff. Your standard stamps just basically say things, and your dynamic stamps are going to include the name of the user and then usually the date and time as well. Now, I'll point out, you can also do your own custom stamps. So if you wanted to upload a PNG file of your favorite image and use that as a stamp, you can go ahead and do so. So maybe, for example, I wanted to create a stamp of the CPE Today logo like this. And we're going to go ahead and put this into our standard business. I can put my own in here as well, and then I can go ahead and stamp it. Now, this file, the stamp is a little big, so I think we would probably want to adjust it. The good news is that if you zoom out enough, you can make these stamps bigger or smaller. But I would tell you it would be a better practice to author them small to begin with rather than constantly have to resize it. But that's a little bit about your stamps. And frankly, I think they're really useful and they recreate a very useful thing that we traditionally did in Office with a physical stamp, but we can now do digitally. Let's go ahead and do a review question. Okay. So, which of the following is a benefit of sharing PDFs via Adobe Cloud Links? Alrighty. So, the correct answer here is it's going to track changes automatically for you. It's really, really useful because it's going to give you the date and time of when these different changes occur, and you'll be able to track them. It absolutely makes it easier to send large files, so it does not make it more difficult. And nor does it create multiple versions. It creates a single universal truth that we can then use to disseminate to as many people as needed. But it's a great way of being able to distribute large files to large number of people, not utilizing, for example, the traditional email tools that we would see inside of email. So it's a way that we can get around some of those. We can get around some of those limitations of email. So I tend to use it especially for those big files. All right, let's go into our next section here. And this is our next big section that I want to cover, which is going to be the protecting of documents, restricting of editing of documents, and then also some of the other advanced features with respect to these documents as well. Okay. Now, with respecting, you can have, it can kind of be a little confusing if you're not familiar with this, two different sets of like restrictions on your documents. You can protect a document, you can restrict a document. And what this really kind of speaks to is that when you protect a document, you're encrypting a document, meaning you're putting a password to that particular document, and it's going to require somebody to be able to provide that password in order to be able to open that document up. And this is a great way of safeguarding potentially sensitive information inside of your document from a snooping eye, or if you were to accidentally send it to somebody else, and then being able to open it up and see what is inside of that actual document. So it's going to put a password in place that you must provide in order to be able to open that document. Now, the cool thing is the modern version of Acrobat uses the latest encryption standards, which is going to be AES 256, which is a wonderful encryption standard. It's what your bank uses. It's what the military uses. It's by far the most popular encryption standard now. And so a modern PDF from a modern version of Acrobat with a long and strong password with 256 AES encryption, you're locked and loaded. That is good security applied to that actual document itself. Okay. And if you lose that password, I'm going to point out, not Adobe, not Microsoft, not anybody will be able to recover that for you, because there's no kind of like central repository with respect to passwords inside of Adobe. There's like no central place that you can go back to for this. Okay. So make sure, if you're going to use the password, long and strong, and then preferably use a password manager, because there's no way of recovering if you lose it. Now, you also have a permissions password too. And now this is going to restrict the ability to make changes to the document. So this will restrict, for example, your ability to be able to print this, extract pages, delete stuff, rearrange the order, and more. You can have that and encryption. You can just have encryption. You can just have, the permissions. It's really kind of up to you. You can have one, both. It's just up to you. And that's just something you can actually do to kind of better manage the security related to your documents. Let's go ahead and take a look at how that might function with respect to creating a document and then securing it. Alrighty, so let's use that management report, which is a great way of, a management report and financial statement might be a great way of, kind of reinforcing this idea of security around this. And, this management report here for Craig's Landscaping, it's got, profit loss, balance sheet. Maybe I want to password protect this and then also restrict access so only certain people can make changes to this document. Now that's going to occur over here under the tools menu. And under the tools menu, it's going to be under protect and standardize. And you're going to grab this guy right here, protect. And from this protect, this is going to be where you're going to choose the option protect with password. And you can also come over here to the advanced options, and you can also access some additional advanced stuff over here. Now, if we want to encrypt this and preventing somebody from being able to view this, okay, we can just go ahead and provide a password. Now I'm just going to use the incredibly secure password of 12345, just so you could see how this works. And I guess it needs to be at least 6 characters long. So we'll do 123456. Okay. Now the password, while it is in the document, you have to save it in order for it to apply. So we're going to go ahead and close that document. We'll come right back into it. And now you'll see it will not let us in until we provide that password. So we'll put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and now we can actually open that up. If a document is password protected like it is here, you won't be able to do anything with it in terms of being able to extract the information inside of that unless you have the password. And even if you try to open it up inside of a different tool, like let's say Chrome here as an example, passwords are supported across every application that uses Adobe PDFs. So it's going to be important that you remember that password and you keep that in a secured way. Okay. So with respect to this, let's show you the other opportunity. And you can also always remove that password as well. So we'll go ahead and take that off if we needed to. Okay, we'll come back down here to protect, and we'll come down over here to our advanced options. And what I want to show you here is the next option here for permissions. So we could, for example, not password protect the document, but restrict permissions on this. We, for example, can say, you know what? Nobody can print this document. Nobody can make changes to this document. So I can prevent people from inserting, deleting, rotating pages, commenting, filling out stuff, so on and so forth. We could just go ahead and say across the board, no. And let's again use that password, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Click OK. Okay. And now that that document is password restricted for editing, if we, for example, wanted to come over here and click that edit option, okay, it's going to prompt me for a password. It's going to say, hey, sorry, Steve, I don't know what you want to do here, but unless we put in that password, you won't be able to get in and be able to edit that particular document. So it restricts the editing capabilities of that as well. So both of these are going to be available under the protect settings. Usually for myself, I come on over here to the advanced options and I just drop down here into security properties, and you can just access all of this straight away. Now, besides the password, you can do this by certificate. You can use what's called Adobe Experience Manager, Microsoft Information Protection, and more. We can also select no security, and it will go ahead and remove all security related to this file. And the document properties will clearly tell you what's allowed and what's not allowed inside of this document. Now, in practice, PDFs aren't the most secure thing in the whole wide world, so it's not something I would necessarily put heavy reliability on, but it's a pretty good way of being able to secure something for distribution that you wouldn't necessarily want other people to see. Now, if you've got other sensitive information that you want to be careful with, maybe you're going to send something out for, distribution, and you want to redact, like salary information, or maybe you've got a document and it's got customer PII in it, personally identifiable information, and more. One option you can use is redaction. And what this actually does is it actually physically removes, like literally like sucks out of the document itself, parts of the document. And you can redact things like social security numbers, credit card numbers, or anything that could potentially be sensitive that you would not necessarily want to be exposed. You mark it on the actual document itself, and then you will tell it to actually redact it. And then it goes to the actual image and literally rips that part of the image out. So there's no way of recovering that data once it's been redacted. The way I like to think about it, it's like if you took a Sharpie and then you were to highlight over a part of a physical document and then photocopy it, that document is permanently redacted. What's also kind of cool about this is you can search across the document for specifically types of data like credit card numbers or social security. So if it's a big old document, you don't have to go page by page. So kind of cool with respect to how you can set up and just use this as a way of distributing information, and then also using it as a way of kind of like removing sensitive info so that it doesn't expose things that you don't necessarily want to be made public. Let's go ahead and take a brief look on how that might work. Alrighty, so we are here in our management report again, and let's just say I wanted to redact, just for our purposes here, let's say I wanted to redact as parts of the balance sheet. And maybe I want to redact, for example, our bank account information here. Really simply, we're going to come over here to the tools menu. We're going to go ahead and select redact, and we're going to go ahead. Okay. And actually, let me select a different document. I think I've got some settings on here that are going to screw this up. Actually, let's go back over here to our simple Word styles document. Let's say we wanted to redact our title here. We're going to go ahead and select the redact option, and you'll see this option up top here that says redact text and images. And we're going to go ahead and select this, and we can either tell it to find specific text. Okay. So I can give it some examples of what I'm looking for: words, phrases, patterns. So like credit card numbers, or social security numbers and more. Or we could just go ahead and draw the things that we don't want. So if I wanted to redact, for example, the title and who authored this incredible masterpiece, we can highlight those. And when they turn red, we know that those are the parts that are going to be redacted. We click apply. It'll also ask us to sanitize and remove. You can turn that off or on. Basically, it'll look through the metadata and other hidden information that would otherwise be exposed, and you can remove that as well. And when we click OK, it'll ask us to save that file. And this is an example of what that redacted document will look like. It will essentially just have a big black box where that redacted information was, and there's no way to recover this information once it's gone. So if you find yourself, for example, having to declassify something, make certain information public, this is a great way to reduce who will be able to see potentially sensitive information. You can choose it on a piece of information basis by piece of information basis. Let's go ahead and have a second review question. Okay. What is the standard encryption for modern PDF documents? The correct answer here is AES 256-bit encryption. This is the standard for Adobe Acrobat 10 and later, and it is absolutely what you should use. The only time you would ever use a lower encryption standard is to support users who are not using the latest operating system and the latest version of Acrobat. Maybe they only have Adobe Acrobat 8. Adobe Acrobat 10's been out for at least 5 or longer years now, so I can't imagine why you would really need to go that far back, but you can if you want. The other answers are incorrect because they are older standards, and they are still supported by the application, but they are older standards. And while still reasonably secure, the strongest and most up-to-date is AES 256. 128-bit RC4 is an older standard, as is 128-bit AES. Okay, that's double the bits over here on 256, and 512 is not supported at all. Well, folks, we're just about to the end of our presentation, and we've taken a really good deep dive with respect to Adobe Acrobat. Let's go ahead and finish with just a couple other alternatives that you can consider besides Adobe Acrobat itself. Okay. Now, I want to start off with where you can get most of these applications. This super useful website called Ninite, Ninite.com. Ninite is a website that I use for so many different projects, and frankly, I just think it's fantastic. And what it is a repository for free softwares. Most of the software listed here is open source, not all of it, but a fair amount of it. But it's a great way of being able to install multiple applications at once on your computer. And it will install like Chrome and Firefox and other tools. You select what you want, click download, and it'll install them all right away. And it's got lots of great software and lots of different categories that you might want to consider using, from Foxit, a reader, to OpenOffice, to Cube PDF, and more. And it's just a really useful place to be able to go get software. Now, a couple of really useful PDF tools that you should know. There's the Sumatra PDF, as well as the Qt PDF tools. Both of these are available from Ninite, and they're great tools to create and manage and edit PDF documents. Let me show you where you can go find those on Ninite. So if you go to Ninite.com, let me zoom in here so you can see this a little bit clearer. And I mean, it's just a really useful tool, and there's no adware, there's no sign up, no nothing. You basically come on over here and you pick this products and services that you want. This is especially useful when you get a brand new computer and you got to put a whole bunch of software on it. So we could, for example, install Chrome and Firefox and Edge Okay. If we come down here, a couple of my other favorite ones are going to be like ShareX. This is the absolute world's best screenshot tool for Windows. If you wanted to, for example, download Google Earth for mapping, KeePass, which is a great password management tool. There's all different types of stuff. You can install Zoom, and you can install other storage tools like Dropbox and more. There's file development and software development tools, security tools, 7-Zip, the world's best zip tool and archive tool, TeamViewer, Real VNC, and more. Basically, just select the products you want. But if you come on over here to the documents section, this is where you can see, for example, like Foxit Reader, which is a free alternative to Adobe Acrobat. You can download LibreOffice and OpenOffice, which is a great free alternative to Microsoft Office, and these other tools. And if you just come down to the bottom here and you select Get Your Ninite, this will download and install all of these tools simultaneously on your computer with really kind of no work required on your side. Okay. Now, I'm not going to install these because I already got a lot of them up in here, but this will just basically install them all, put them right on your machine, ready for you to be able to use. Now, they're all great. I will say, though, from my opinion, again, Adobe Acrobat is that gold standard with respect to creating and managing PDFs. But if you're not a heavy user of these documents and you don't need the e-signature or the form stuff, Sumatra PDF, QPDF, both great options for you. Now, two other options you should know too with respect to creating PDFs as well. Your standard Windows and Mac application, Mac operating system are going to have a free PDF printer tool built right inside of it with no additional software. It's called the Microsoft PDF Printer. It's exactly like the Adobe Distiller. It'll generate a PDF. You can print directly to it and it'll generate that PDF for you on demand. And you should also know Chrome can do this too. It's the default PDF option for, PDFs inside of Google Chrome. And you can open up any type of PDF you want right inside of that internet browser as well. And it's great, fast, easy, efficient. And, again, most of us have Chrome or Edge, which is also a Chrome-based browser, installed as well. Let's go ahead and have our final review question. Where can you find and download alternatives to Adobe products? Well, the most correct answer here is going to be Ninite. That Ninite.com, not only for PDF alternatives, but really all types of free software. Fabulous tool. It's also safe and secure. You don't need to worry about downloading malware from there. Technically, though, you could download Chrome from Google directly or QPDF or Sumatra PDF directly from those developers automatically. Those would work. But if you wanted to get great alternatives to lots of different products, that Ninite.com would be my top pick. Well, folks, that does bring us to the end of our presentation today. Today, we took a pretty deep dive into Adobe Acrobat, and we looked at some different ways that we can use Acrobat for creating forms and then also sending those forms out for e-signature. We talked about how we can use Adobe Acrobat for creating and sharing and reviewing documents with our colleagues, whether we're sending something out for comment or just distributing the file and more. We also talked about how we can secure our documents, either through encrypting the document with a password or restricting editing capabilities of that as well. And we finished with a couple of alternatives to Adobe Acrobat products and where you can find those on Ninite. So that brings us to the end, at least of our first section on Adobe and PDFs. I'm sure there's so many other avenues that we can go. Tell you what, if you want to see more of this content, connect with us on social media, leave us a comment where you'd like to go next and what type of information you want on and knowledge you'd want on Adobe PDF and Acrobat, and we'll make it happen for you. Now, if you made it to this part of the broadcast and you're a financial professional, how about you get some credits for watching or listening? It's super simple. Head on over to cpetoday.com and search for our course today, Adobe Acrobat. Our course code is ADFP3. Just type in Acrobat and you'll find it. You'll complete a 5-question quiz and you will earn a credit for watching and listening. In fact, if you're a first-time listener, user to CPE Today, thank you for being here. I appreciate you watching and listening. You can use coupon code ONEFREEPODCAST at checkout, and you can make today's broadcast or any other podcast if you're choosing 100% free and get a free credit on us. Now, if you're not a financial professional, but you just like tech knowledge, consider connecting with us on social media. You can find us just about everywhere as CPE Today, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and more. We'd love for you to leave a comment or a review. And if you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing wherever you happen to get content, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and more. You can find us as CPE Today. It really does help folks find the show and podcasts. So every review counts. We'd love to hear what you think. Thank you so much for your time and effort. I really, truly appreciate you being here. I love what I do. I love being able to help people, and I couldn't do it without you nice folks coming and listening today. So I hope to see you in the office the next time around. Best wishes and good luck to you all.